So Peter Parker is currently 2 out of his 8 deaths that he is allowed while he fights against Cyttorrak's forces. And this time he is going to fight someone so immensely powerful they have the power to control time itself, which in the end, keeping the theme, he dies a very brutal and unique death, if you will. But starting off, we pick up in the middle of a restaurant where we see Spider-Man with some of his other companions, and even current new love interest, which I mean, yes, during all of this Paul stuff, him and MJ aren't together, and he is essentially seeing a woman named Shay, which later on her and Black Cat will become a little more important. But for now, we focus on this new entity, the child of CYTORRAK, which of course CYTORRAK being the being that empowers the Juggernaut. But this child, or SCION of CYTORRAK, is going to have a death battle match with Spider-Man, and so far he has fought someone who has the control over gravity and the other over space itself, and now it's time for someone who has the ability over, well, time, to do battle. And thankfully for Peter, once this girl shows up, she freezes time, not letting anybody in the vicinity see or hear their battle, as she used some of her powers to whisk Spider-Man away through a portal. And this portal doesn't just transport him along a distance, but through time itself, as it makes him appear years ago at one very special place that is ingrained in his head, one specific day, the time and death of Uncle Ben. As Spider-Man rushes towards the house saying, "This feels real, it is real, it's that exact night. I can finally save Uncle Ben if I can just get inside." But it is never that easy, as he is stopped by Cyrios, which is her name, as she uses a few of her magical abilities to pull Spider-Man back, delaying his time just enough so when he finally gets up there, he is unable to stop the bullet, unable to save Uncle Ben a second time, as he opens the door, literally watching him get shot, which for Peter must be incredibly traumatic. And that's another thing about Spider-Man in general, which we will see later on throughout this comic, that even though Peter is, well, infamous having bad luck and things always go wrong for him, the absolute mental fortitude or willpower he needs just to survive in this crazy Marvel universe is insane. Like, take for example over in DC, Batman, who also lost his father figure or parents anytime through whatever shenanigans, he comes in contact with them or sees them, it's usually a very traumatic thing for him and he even breaks down. But back over with Peter here, he doesn't have time for any of that, as he is too busy having to defend the Earth and possibly the entire universe against Cyttorrak in this giant game he is playing. As just like that, he has moved along without having any time to process what is even happening. He moves through another time portal, which going through these portals not only physically hurts Spider-Man, but it will also take a mental toll on him, as Peter finally puts 2 and 2 together to reveal what Cyrios' plan was. As he says, "Let me guess, you dragged me through the depths of people I love until I just quit." Because like I said before, they aren't really having a straight up fight. Of course, with Spider-Man having to defend Earth as its new champion, because Dr. Doom either being just too lazy or seeing this beneath him, off to do whatever Dr. Doom being the Sorcerer Supreme would be doing, he entrusted Spider-Man to be Earth's defender and play this little game with Cyttorrak and his children. And usually for Spider-Man to win, he just needs to land an attack and down his opponents. But Cyrios, being the psychopath that she is, before they have any type of physical confrontation, she wants to break Peter. She wants to put him through every one of his failures, the people who he couldn't save, the people who he have let died, as she takes him to the iconic bridge that one day where Gwen Stacy dies by the hand of Green Goblin, or Spider-Man, depending on which interpretation you think, whether it was the Green Goblin who killed her or Spider-Man trying to save her accidentally killed her. But either way, while they are there and Spider-Man is watching this horrific scene play out once more, he doesn't play into Cyrios' trick, because he puts together that this is all just a distraction, keeping him off balance. He knows he can't save Gwen the same way he couldn't save Uncle Ben just moments prior. So instead, he focuses onto the real prize, instead lunging to physically attack her, saying he can end this stupid contest quickly. But that's the thing about fighting a being who has control over time. Not only can they put you anywhere throughout time, but they know what's going to happen in the future. So she is always one step ahead of Peter, as soon as he even gets an inch close to her, boom, they disappear back into another moment in time. This time to the other equally iconic bell tower, where we see Spider-Man and the Venom symbiote during their first departure, which just goes to note another failure in the long list of things Spider-Man has done over the years, including people he couldn't save, moments of weakness. But Peter still tries to push through it all. He's saying he can't let his playlist of failures distract him, as he lunges towards her once more, trying to put an end to this. As Cyrios goes on to further tempt Spider-Man, as they move over to see Eddie Brock, which just moments prior where he got the Venom symbiote, she makes note of how technically Eddie Brock, and originally what Venom was all because of Spider-Man. How Peter, even if unintentionally, somewhat ruined Eddie Brock's life, and of course with him separating with the Venom symbiote. Venom, once he bonds with Eddie Brock during their time as just a villain, they have gone to murder many people in their quest of revenge against Spider-Man, which in a way falls back on Peter. And of course with them going through another time skip, she goes on to basically dismantle Spider-Man verbally in his past, with her going on to say, "Champion, I am not like my brothers. I have studied you humans since Doctor Strange first made his deal with my father. Your lives are nothing but flickers. Yet you spend all of your time in the past or future without real power to change either. While you physically change, Spider-Man, your failures are embarrassingly the same forever. it is so predictable and so boring. As they keep flipping through moment, time through time, Spider-Man trying each time to get a hit on her, with of course her having power over time, it is almost impossible to attack someone who knows your step before you make it. But we do see some iconic locations and time stands, such as Kraven during The Last Hunt, The Last Stand alternate future version of Spider-Man, which is an interesting cameo. But while all of this is happening, she also goes on to further say, "It makes me wonder, Spider-Man, how can you not see that failure is your only option? No matter where you are, in the past or in the future." Essentially saying that Peter, during his current life, his past, and maybe even his future, no matter how much he may try to be this hero, he is only a failure. The longer he goes on, the more people he will hurt. But even through it all, Peter is not disillusioned by all of her points in what she's saying, which just goes back to my point about Peter having a incredible mental fortitude and willpower, even through the crazy situation he is now, being Earth's defender against the very powerful children of Cyttorrak and this magic and everything he is dealing with. But Peter, while dealing with this, goes on to say how he hates time travel, all of the paradoxes and meaningless changeable rules. But currently, right now, a paradox is exactly what he needs. Because right now, he needs to attack and directly hurt Cyrios. But before, she has just been skipping and time traveling to a different point every time he would try. So, he is going to have to work smarter and not harder. As they finally stop and arrive during the point where Spider-Man let that robber get away, the same robber that would eventually go on to, kill Uncle Ben and start him throughout this whole journey of being the Spider-Man that he is now. But while they are almost taking a little bit of a breather, Spider-Man goes on to taunt her this time, saying, "You're the inevitability of time, right? So you should already know who wins this fight." Which, of course, with Cyrios still laughing in his face, calling Spider-Man a fool and asking, does he really think he can still win? He can barely move at this point. But this exact arrogance and overconfidence is what is going to lead to her downfall and defeat. As in real time, they watch as the robber gets away, which just shows another one of Peter's past failures and how that robber obviously goes on to kill Uncle Ben. But Cyrios this time is the one distracted, as she opens another portal, going to drag Spider-Man along for furthering their chase and furthering to break his mental. But unfortunately, Peter is smarter than this, as a time portal she opens up allows someone new to enter the battlefield, as another future version of Spider-Man comes rocketing through, hitting her with an insanely strong punch, knocking her out in one hit. Now, it might be a little confusing at first, but basically what happened was, this future version of Spider-Man, back in his normal iconic costume, he remembers his battle from the past in his past history. So of course, with him being at the right time and right place, as soon as she opened the portal, he jumped through, clocking her in the head, knocking her out. As Peter in the comic even goes on to say, "I slowed down for a second and just think. I set my mind to being in the right place at the right time and put trust in my real superpower, my brain, my intelligence, to do the rest of the work, and then using his lesser powers, his physical abilities, to clean her clock." But of course, with her down for the count right now, the two time displaced Spider-Man have a little bit of a talk, with this future version of Spider-Man even going on to tell his past self, "I have faith in you, but right now I can't say too much, just hang in there." Which of course tells this current Peter, the Peter we are following, that this little prep talk from his future self means things in his current future are about to get really bad and really fast. And so with Cyrios finally getting back up from being knocked out, she is of course salty about losing, which that's what she gets, someone with her powers and how powerful she is, she could have ended the battle at the start, but she wanted to play with her food. And so with her losing now, she decides, well, if I lost, I'm going to take you with me. So of course she goes on to murder Peter. But no, she doesn't just use her time abilities to take him to the end of the universe or something, but she does something else, something pretty interesting. She fractures his mind, sending each part of his consciousness throughout time into each moment of his life, which imagine experiencing every moment of your life so far all in an instant back right now. So like when you were younger, if you fell off a bike or if you stubbed your toe. But now imagine that with Peter being Spider-Man, every time he got hit by the Hulk or got into a giant battle with Thanos or anything like that, all in an instant, which of course is just too much for not only his mind but his body, as he dies and uses one of the reeds of Ragnador to bring him back to life, which he goes from now having 6 to now 5. Which wraps us back to where the story all began, back in that restaurant with him and his friends. As you know, back in the beginning, Cyrios froze time and took Peter, and now with her being defeated, he is sent back to where it all began. But because of this entire experience, Peter had some sort of epiphany. He sees things a little bit different now. Because usually Peter has a hard time balancing his life and hero work. Now imagine that, but adding on top of that being this now mystical champion defender of Earth against Cyttorak and his entire forces. And of course having to die over and over, which isn't pleasant in the slightest, not for his body or for his mind. And now with Peter walking Shay, his date and current love interest, back home, it's even worse because he can't even tell her anything of this. On top of that, he is reminded that, well, he is kind of unemployed right now. So that's another thing that's going bad in his life. And even Shay realizes this, how down Peter is being, so she decides to invite him to a picnic tomorrow, which Peter originally is going to just deny, make up some sort of excuse that he can't make it because he doesn't know when another Scion is going to show up and he's going to have to go through another adventure to defend the Earth and whatever may have you. But he'll think about that all later, because now he has to get home, which after arriving to his apartment, he finds an angry Aunt May because he was supposed to help Aunt May plan for a feast and tell Norman Osborn about a donation that he promised. And of course, with Peter dealing with a plethora of other stuff, all of this just slipped his mind. And crazily enough, it all finally gets to Peter. He snaps and goes off at Aunt May, yelling at her, telling her that he's doing the best he can, which, you know, for Peter to get mad and blow up at Aunt May, things must be pretty dire. And of course they are, with Peter eventually making it inside, telling himself that he can't keep this many plates spinning. It's always been hard to balance, you know, being Spider-Man with his normal life, but all of this champion stuff is on a whole other level. So Spider-Man decides that he essentially just needs someone to talk to, someone to vent to, as he goes out and seeks someone who will understand all of the different moving parts in his life currently, and that someone is none other than the Black Cat, Felicia Hardy. And so as they sit down on the rooftop, Spider-Man not only apologizes for currently being a bad friend, because currently, you know, they aren't at odds. Peter Parker and Felicia Hardy have somewhat of a pretty close friendship going on, with of course the Black Cat knowing Peter is Spider-Man and vice versa. But Felicia goes on to give Peter a little bit of advice, because yes, things are pretty crazy in his life, so she goes on to say, "My advice is find your joy. There is so much to life that we don't control, but happiness, small little moments of delight, we can claim those for ourselves, and we should unapologetically," which just shines a little bit of light onto why she's a criminal doing what she does. That's her joy, you know, being a master thief, breaking into the impossible and taking what she wants, with her even having in her bag a $2 million crown jewel that she stole earlier, which Peter, using a little bit of his magic, teleports it out of her bag and back to him so he can put it back to its rightful owner. He thanks her for the small little prep talk, and they go about their way. But he realizes that Black Cat is right. He just needs to find a little bit of joy in his life. As cutting over to tomorrow, we see him change his mind and go on that picnic date with Shay, setting aside the worries of a giant cosmic battle for the fate of the Earth, and now just enjoying a small little picnic with someone he cares about. But again, like always, it is never just that easy for Peter Parker, as because while he's on his little outing, he's being watched and stalked from behind by two more children of CYTORRAK, his next challenges, as they contemplate if they should go in and just attack Spider-Man now, while he's vulnerable and distracted. But these two children, which are apparently twins here, one of them goes on to say, "No, we shouldn't rush into things. Spider-Man only knows very little magic, and yet he has managed to defeat 3 of us. We better study him thoroughly before making our next move." Which is bad enough, letting the villains get prep time, being able to study Peter, who his loved ones are, and what he is able to do. But it gets even worse, as when we move over to Alaska, we pick up with some of the mutants and X-Men, with them just at a home base, you know, just goofing around playing games. But suddenly the person who is of most interest here, we see Juggernaut, who of course being the earthly avatar of CYTORRAK himself, you know, the being behind this entire story and battle. It was only really a matter of time until Juggernaut got involved. But to what end we don't know yet, as because while he's in the middle of playing, suddenly he senses something. Whether it's just in his head or it's a beaconing call, he tells his fellow mutants that there is something wrong, and how he can't just goof off anymore, he must prepare. And with this we know Juggernaut is going to get involved, but we don't know in which capacity yet. He could either be involved inside with CYTORRAK and his children to fight against Spider-Man, which of course Juggernaut, the same person who can fight the Hulk, going against Spider-Man is not a good time for Peter. But also, what if he sides with Peter and fights against CYTORRAK and his children, which would be bad for Juggernaut, well, because he gets his power from CYTORRAK. Either way, we will see how this turns out in the next issue, as this one and video comes to a close. If you have enjoyed, leave a like, or subscribe if you're new and want to see more of this type of content. As always, this was the Hero Informer, and thank you for watching.